and getting into this. But any thoughts about this lineup? I know you have some with Blurple and the Amber Ruby lineup.
Now, we actually came to this after hand alters are done. These players are ready to go.
Okay, they're ready to go.
Yeah, they're ready to go, which is super exciting. Luca there with the Disney Lorcana sleeves. We've got double sleeve there. You see that giant deck there on the left. The fist bump there. Love this from these players, wishing each other luck. And here we go. We are off to the races. Luca off first with the turn 1 Chernobog's followers. The standard play from this list.
Standard play. We are going to go over to Luca, who does draw the Tipo for turn, but I think we have some ramp in hand already. He's going to just go ahead and ink that and pass the turn back to Luca.
Yeah, so this is a deck. One of the reasons you play Blurple in this particular matchup, one of the reasons Luca brought it, or in this format, is it's a really good deck on the play. And so knowing that you're going to have to navigate different decks on the play and the draw, this is a deck that Luca likes to bring in when he is, or that Lucas likes to bring in when he's on the draw.
Looks like Luca is playing this Diablo Obedient Raven on turn 2.
Yeah, I'll highlight. This is an action. Well, this is the pretty standard list from Luca there on the left. I'm taking a look at the deck list. We do have the Hades Ruthless Tyrant worked in.
Yeah, it looks like it is a Maui Half Shark list. We're playing a couple Pirate's Life as well. So rather than the typical Ruby Amethyst that some of us may be used to, full of the bounce package, we're leaning into the Maui Half Shark sort of actions package here. I'm excited to see some of the cards in Lucas's deck list as well. We've got one of the new Radigans. There's only one copy of it, the 4 willpower Radigan that you have to ink every turn or else he gets banished. But he's basically playing the Blurple list that does the Amethyst thing better than most other Amethyst decks do. As we see Lucas on turn 2 playing this Tipo, ramping so that we can get ahead, get to those genies, those 4-cost characters that you may want to be playing. But we do see Luca playing this library on 3 after going pretty wide with 3 1-drops here.
This is a fantastic play on turn 3. These are characters on Lucas' side of the board that he's going to want to use to push the lore total. But eventually, those characters are going to be banished, either because he chooses to banish them, in the case of Chernobog's Followers, to get additional cards, or because Lucas challenges into them. Sticking them in that library will get him some extra cards. This is a great turn 1, 2, 3 with 1-on-1, 2-on-2 in the library on 3.
And as we look at Lucas's hand too, it's a little bit slow in response to something like this. We have the Genie in hand that we can play. There's an Elsa that we can maybe follow up with afterwards. And see an Iago in hand as well, but we don't have a Peter Pan Shadow Finder that we can use to rush in. So I feel like this library is going to be sticking around for a little while just because it's going to take a couple turns for Lucas to really start developing a board. And if Luca can respond with some of that removal that we see in Ruby through cards like Brawl or even Maui Hero to All, things like that, to sort of keep characters off of Lucas' side of the board, that library might be able to start ticking up lore as this game goes on.
If you're going to need to respond to it, you're going to need a bigger body on the board. And here we have Iago Spectral Parrot, or Giant Spectral Parrot. I always forget the giant, but he is a giant Spectral Parrot, which will enable him to do some work clearing out that library, but it'll take a couple turns. This is one of the new the illusion characters. This actually came out in set 7, kind of previewing what we're going to see in Reign of Jafar. It's a card that's become pretty popular in these lists.
Yeah, you're definitely going to need to get some characters out to deal with this library so it doesn't get too out of hand, especially with Luca building out this wide board with these 1-drop characters that you kind of want to be banished. The Chernobog Followers, you can quest with them and then banish them to draw a card. If they're at the library, you get to draw an extra card. And the Diablo, you really don't care if it gets banished or not usually because it'll replace itself and draw a card as well. But while it's at the library, you get to draw an extra card also. So it's a great way for Luca to keep cards in his hand. We see him playing the Merlin Crab here, utilizing this Diablo, giving it Challenger +3 so that it can challenge into this Tipo. It'll get banished at the library, like we mentioned earlier, and Luca gets to draw 2 cards from that.
Yeah, great trade there. The Diablos are little menacing cards. They sit around the gain lore, but probably one of the favorite crab targets for this deck.
Yeah, one of the better ones, just because the Diablo, having 0 strength, not always the most useful, but if you can make a use for him as a 1-drop character and have him trade up, even into a 2-cost character like Tipo, you're pretty happy about that. As we go back to Lucas on his turn, though, we're moving into his 5-ink turn. I do see an Elsa in hand that we can play if we want to get that out. It looks like we're going to opt for the Genie, playing him. He's an evasive character, 2/4, 2 lore, and draws a card when he enters play.
Yeah, and that library, we talked about how menacing it is, how likely it's there to stay for a while. Luca, though, running that Cusco, which is a card that can enable him to banish locations if they become pesky later on as well. So an interesting tech card there, a way to get around items and locations. Of course, he's putting a lot of work into banishing this library the traditional way with damage, so likely not to be around too much longer that way, but Cusco, a fun tech card there.
Yeah, and another thing that we see from Lucas is he inked a Monstro. He's only running 2 in his deck. It's a new card from one of the more recent sets that Blurple got that helped them in sort of a board wipe way. Blurple is really good at being able to draw a bunch of cards and keep cards in hand, so you can play out this Monstro, discard a bunch of cards, and challenge with it over and over again. I'm not sure how useful that card's going to be in this matchup, but if Luke is able to build a wider board, he may need one, and he only has 2, and one of them was just put into the inkwell, so something to consider.
Another fun card, just to highlight from Luca there, he did pull his 1 copy of Ursula Sea Witch Queen. He's only running 1 in this deck, but it is a shiny version, the store championship version, or set champ version. So fun to see it. I don't know if we'll get to see it played, but fun there. The Chernobog's follower is going to the library, banishing upon questing. Luca has now got 3 cards off that library and using his next thing to play Magic Broom, putting that in the library as well. So a lot of reading going on right now.
Lots of reading that we're studying up here. He's also going to ink that Ursula for turn so we can play Chernobog's followers, banish that broom when a character is played. The broom draws a card when it's banished, and then draws another card at the library. Luca has drawn tons of cards from this library at this point. You can see why we were mentioning earlier it was important for Lucas to get rid of this library, not only for the lore gain that it gets every turn, but it just enables Luca to dig really deep into his deck, find the cards that he needs, and set up for the later in the game.
Beast here will sing Friends from the other side. A card all the way back from the first chapter, still seeing play here. And we draw into that other Monstro.
Second Monstro, yeah.
2, and we found the second one now.
Always good to draw some cards first before you make any decisions on your turn. Lucas just looking at what options he has available to him. Like we mentioned earlier, Blurple is so good at just drawing cards. You have a ton of characters that draw cards when they enter play, when they're banished, cards like Friends on the other side that allow you to draw cards. A lot of this deck is essentially Sapphire ramp cards and Amethyst cards afterwards. So doing the thing that Amethyst does.
This deck has a lot of high end on the top and a lot of high end removal too. Oftentimes you run Hades, you have cards like Monstro, so ramping and getting into that end game is super important for these Blurple builds. You do have answers in the mid game though. We do see an Elsa there, which will allow him to answer some ready characters. We also have Foxes, so a lot of interaction in the early game. But we are going to sing a second Friends from the other side here. Not sing, but play with ink. So drawing 4 cards this turn off those double Friends.
I think we're up to like 6 or 7 cards in hand for Lucas at this point. You can see both players really valuing cards in hand, understanding that this game is going to go to the late game, and the person that's going to come out ahead is going to be the person with the most resources. And so we're going to see Lucas inking that Tipo, playing a Fox, bouncing this Genie, using the Fox to finish off that library, and then we're going to go ahead and quest with this Iago, which can do it pretty safely because it has evasive.
Yeah, so back over to Luca here for the response. Luca now inking his 6th card after questing with Chernobog's followers.
Drawing cards first before we make any decisions. Just a small sign of, just how professional these players are, how good they are at TCGs. You always want to see your unknowns before your knowns. You don't want to ink a card before you draw a card, and then the card that you drew is one that would have been better for you to ink.
Did you rather have in the inkwell?
We're also getting close to some of these critical turns for Ruby Amethyst, we're going to get up to 6 ink this round, but next turn we will be at that 7 ink critical point.
Oh, and it's another library gift for Bell. We'll send that crab over there. That crab will challenge into the Fox, banish itself, or be banished upon the return by the Fox, and then drawing a card off the library. So library doing a lot of work this game. Luca doing a little board control there. We have another Ursula Sea Witch going into the inkwell, followed by Diablo, who will move immediately into the library.
Lucas does have that Cusco in hand that we can use to get rid of this library if we want to. He's only playing 1 Cusco Selfish Emperor, but when it gets played, you can put a location or item card into their player's inkwell. And of course, Luca isn't playing any items, so nothing to worry about there. We'll see if he chooses to play this and get rid of the library.
There is that Cusco. You highlighted it right there. Going into the inkwell exerted an efficient way to remove it from play and getting a 2 lore quester on the board as well. So big swing there.
Yeah, and may not be valuable in this matchup as there's not a whole lot of damage that gets done individually, but Cusco does have that other ability that allows you to pay for ink really as many times as you want and give all of your characters resist +1. In case Lucas wants to make any favorable trades, it's possible for him to do that. But Luca is going to start by playing 2 Genies, I believe, this turn, drawing 2 cards, setting up 2 evasive questers. We have the Iago that we can use to challenge those if Luca decides to exert them for any reason. We also have a Elsa in hand, I believe, that we could use this turn to exert one of them and go ahead and banish one of them before they get to quest.
That's true. We do have the answers to the Genie. You know, the Genie Wars were such a story in the last meta before the North American Championship. Genie's back and forth. Elsa's responding on turn 5. We're going to see a bit of that here, most likely. Genie, a very, very dangerous card. I mean, drawing a card is great, but then that 2 lore gain evasive character also pretty impactful. So there we do see the Elsa come down, exerting the Genie upon entering play, and the Iago then able to challenge into it and banish it before it's able to do any more damage.
I don't even think we banked this turn either. We could set up, I think, a Peter Pan Shadow Finder if we wanted to. We're going to go ahead and quest with this Cusco, push our lore lead a little bit, catching up to Luca at 6. Lucas now at 4.
This board state looking a lot better now for Lucas. It's a really great back and forth here.
And this is the dangerous game you have to play against a deck like Ruby Amethyst. You don't want to overextend because it looks like Luca is playing 3 Be Prepareds.
And he just drew one off the top deck.
Okay, so
as you said it.
The cat and mouse game that you have to play against Ruby Amethyst is putting just enough characters out there to want to make Luca use one of these Be Prepareds, but not so many that it puts you behind. Luca taking a second to consider what he wants to do for this turn. Lots of cards in hand to work with as well. Usually you're wanting to save those Be Prepareds also if you can. If you can just challenge and banish some of these characters on their own. That way you can save it for when you really need it.
Yeah, it's so important to time this properly because the problem, unless you have a character to sing it, is oftentimes you're giving your opponent the initiative. Then you do manage to clear the board, but it's back over to your opponent because you usually don't have enough ink to do much else. And then in this instance, Lucas would have all of his ink available to rebuild the board rapidly. And so Luca trying to figure out the exact moment when the pressure is just too much that I have to reset everything. Ideally, Luca would like to have a lot more ink on board so he can play the Be Prepared and then establish a character or 2 right afterwards. So it looks like we are going to ink and play a 3 ink character.
Inking the Pirate's Life, notably. We are playing 3 of those, so can't get that back with Maui Half Shark later in the game if we want to. We're going to play a Merlin Crab, giving Genie that Challenger +2 so we can go ahead and banish this Cusco. And then there's the Maui Half Shark.
Maui Half Shark. This is one of the finishers for this deck. Getting that on the board here enables a little bit of lore game. It's also a powerful evasive challenger. Now this shuts down, this makes it a lot less tempting for Lucas to challenge into that Genie and banish it. So now something else to consider. But we do have another Elsa on board. And with that Parrot in play, there it is. That Elsa is going to exert that Shark.
And we have the Crab to follow up. This is pretty big because we can use this Elsa and Crab to just go ahead and banish the Maui Half Shark before it was able to do anything.
Maui Half Shark there and gone again. The perfect answer there. But Lucas forced to take the entire turn and 2 cards to respond to that 1 Half Shark. Then he will use that Elsa to clean up that last Genie. And now that board state, again, looks a lot less intimidating. So it's just back and forth here in this mid-game. Each player trying to control the other player's board.
Both players getting a little bit... Well, I say that. I think Luca just riffled through a couple different cards. I think Lucas was challenging and banishing that Diablo, so we're going to move on to Luca's turn.
Luca now with 9 ink available. Taking a look at all his options. Pretty big hand. Look at all those cards. You know, the library doing a ton of work. Luca having played a lot of cards. Still plenty of options available with so much card draw in this Amethyst build.
And he has his last library in hand, too. He's only playing 3. We've seen 2 already. He's going to start with a Genie, playing that out, draw a card.
I think that's the 3rd Genie we've seen this game.
Starting 5 ink to play Finders Keepers. Okay, so we're just going to continue to draw cards. Finders Keepers is just a 5 ink song that you can play and draw 3 cards for. We mentioned earlier, you know, the person that usually finds themselves ahead in these Amethyst games, Amethyst Mirrors, because Purple and Ruby Amethyst are pretty similar decks in a regard. If they're looking to go to the late game, the person with more cards in hand is definitely at an advantage, and Luca is prioritizing that currently.
Yeah, and the hand disparity is going to make a big difference here shortly, as you highlighted, Brandon. Luca's down to 4 cards with that card draw there, just using a lot of his resources to respond to Luca. But Luca just drawing so many cards. Lucas responds with the Genie of his own, drawing a card off the Genie, and drawing into another Genie. So this is the Genie Wars all over again. It's Genie after Genie. Here it comes again. It'll draw another card, and now this board getting really wide and scary.
Yeah, I'm getting really
Luca.
tempted for Luca here to play that Be Prepared that we have on the front of our hand. Lucas this is one of the things that Amethyst is good at. We're playing the genies. We don't want them to be banished, but at least they replace themselves, right? So if Luca does happen to play this Be Prepared on the next turn, at least the genie drew you cards.
Lucas perhaps knowing that might be inbound, or just perhaps looking to push his lore a little bit, questing for all three of those characters. He'll push his lore total a little bit higher.
Luca's starting with 10 ink currently, so there's a couple things we can do this turn.
I do think we've missed some of the lore gain on Lucas's side. If Elsa and Crab, there we go.
There we go.
There we go. All right, that's a little bit better. Even all at 7.
Luca having a handful of cards currently. Again, these matches are untimed, so the players have plenty of time on their turns to think out every possible interaction, every possible series of events so that they don't miss anything. They are playing for the World Championship. Moving on to the semifinals here. Go ahead and sing Friends on the Other Side with Merlin Crab here. Just draw 2 cards. We see just how much these players prioritize cards in hand.
Yeah, Genie will quest. I think
Usually
you may be
spells.
right.
Oh, I see the 7 ink pulled to the side to the left there. Are we going to do it? Or are we going to bounce something with the Merlin Fox, maybe?
Thinking about it.
Yeah, we want our
Merlin
genie
Fox,
back
bounce
so
the
we can
genie.
replay it.
All right, where's Baker when you need
There it is.
I don't know if you heard that. We had to do it.
I don't think they heard it.
Be Prepared coming down, sweeping the board, and that will be all the ink for Luca, though. He does have that genie and had plenty of things to rebuild the board with, but Lucas will be able to respond first here when it's back over to his turn.
Yeah, and this is where you have to rebuild. This is why cards in hand are so important, because you reach these states where you're basically reset. After the Be Prepared, everything gets banished. Luca's going to play that Diablo Obedient Raven and then pass it over to Lucas.
Lucas drawing a bell, not a card that's super impactful in this moment. We'll start off with Finders Keepers, drawing 3 cards.
Let It Go, Finders Keepers, and an Iago. We have 3 ink left, 4 ink once we ink for the turn. Which isn't leaving us with a whole lot, I don't think, to play for this turn.
Now, perhaps we could play that bell just to get something on the board. We do have the Peter Pan Shadow Finder, which will give great to get on the board because then it gives your other evasive characters rush.
Yeah, great combo with that Iago that we drew. If you can get the Peter Pan out there. Okay, so we are going to play out the Iago.
Yeah, of course, Lucas, well aware that genie is back in Lucas' hand and likely to come down this turn.
Genie, just an extremely powerful card, having 2 lore, drawing a card, being evasive, 4 willpower, so difficult to banish a lot of times. One of the reasons we see Iago being played, because it sort of checks these genies with his 4 strength.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like the 4 strength into the 4 willpower, it is the perfect answer. One different willpower in either way, and Iago is probably not seeing much play. The interesting thing, these characters, will highlight the illusion characters are very well statted for their cost. That vanish ability being the downside, meaning they can be removed by any effect that your opponent chooses them with. But oftentimes, it's just fine if you want to spend a card getting rid of my character. I don't like it as you're getting rid of a 4/6. You're getting rid of a 4-cost card with another card. Luca also seeing the value of this well-statted 4-cost card, a giant spectral parrot coming down on his side of the board as well. And here the rebuild stage is well underway.
Yeah, and this is where we enter some interesting board states, because if Luca quests with this genie, or I guess we play the genie this turn, but if Lucas wants to save his Iago to challenge the genie, then the Iago takes 2 damage, putting it down to 4 willpower, and then Luca's Iago can challenge Lucas's Iago back and survive the challenge. So you have these sort of trade wars happening. Makes it a little bit difficult to move on with the current board state.
Interesting to see how the Azurite Sea going into the Inkwell here.
Or are we going to let it go something?
Let's see. We are going to let it go the giant spectral parrot.
So it'll put the parrot in the Inkwell, exerted. Then we're going to play this Elsa so we can exert the Genie. We're going to challenge Genie with Iago and then finish the Diablo off with the Elsa that we played since she has Rush.
But look at the card event. Luca with so many cards in hand, and Lucas forced to spend several cards and a lot of resources to respond to Luca's board state. Luca just with a handful of answers to rebuild things here.
We see that Peter Pan Shadow Finder coming down means, yeah, we're going to see a Maui Half Shark come in. A great combo for this deck. Basically exactly what it's wanting to set up. Peter Pan Shadow Finder has an ability that lets evasive characters gain rush when they enter play. So usually Maui Half Shark would not be able to challenge on the turn that it's played, but because of the Peter Pan Shadow Finder in play, it is. When Maui Half Shark challenges and banishes a character, you're able to pick any action from your discard and bring it back to hand.
Oh man, look at that! Look at that combo. Finding a brawl from the discard pile, bringing it back, and immediately using it to banish that Elsa. That was an incredible swing. The Shadow Finder partnered with the Shark, bringing back the brawl. All of a sudden, Luca's board is empty this time. It's back over to him with a lot smaller hand to respond.
Also gaining a lure when you play any action from Maui Half Shark as well. So a lot of synergy happening there. Lucas is going to play this Finders Keepers to get some more options in his hand. We have 5 more ink to work with, 6 if we can ink up for this turn. I think we probably have an answer for this Half Shark.
Oh,
No, we're going to play Friends on the Other Side. We do find a Popsicle there and a Bell. I know we're holding on to a Tamatoa Happy as a Claim as well, so we can re-get it. Yeah, okay, so we do have the answer. We're going to play our own Lucas is going to play his own Peter Pan Shadow Finder just to banish this Maui Half Shark. Not giving Luca any more lore just from playing actions.
I mean, a fantastic job finding the answer there and clearing that Half Shark. That Half Shark would have allowed Luca to run away with the game pretty quickly, or at least stall Luca's board state for a while. So getting that off the board feels really good. It's back over to Luca for the response here. To ink into the Ursula Sea Witch, followed by...
Oh, a Hades.
Is that Ruthless Tyrant?
Yeah, I believe so. Hades Ruthless Tyrant, dealing 2 damage to the Ursula, allowing him to draw 2 cards. And then when Hades quests, you can do the same thing, dealing 2 damage to one of your characters to draw 2 cards as well. 7-cost character that can sing Be Prepared if needed also.
Yeah, it's a fantastic card. It's come out in set 8, worked its way into these decks pretty quickly. You usually see a couple of them run, at least one. It's just a great way to draw cards, and it also, as you pointed out, sings Be Prepared to allow you to reset the board and then immediately use your ink to play characters. So, and the card draw off the chains this game. Another Friend from the Other Side being sung by Peter Pan Shadowfinder. Look at Luca's hand size.
I know, that's what I was about to say. There's so many cards in Luca's hands right now. He has to have all of the answers to anything. We do see that 3rd library coming down and moving the Peter Pan Shadowfinder to it as well, in case Lucas has a way to banish it on this turn. Going to start with the Finders Keepers for Lucas, drawing 3 cards. Find a Croquet Mallet and a Peter Pan Shadowfinder, along with a Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. That Croquet Mallet, a set 1 card, set 1 item card.
Sometimes these things come back.
Just interesting things to see here. It's an item card that, when banished, gives a character rush, so could be useful in this matchup if we see this Hades turn sideways. Lots of crabs in hand. All 4 Tamatoa Happy as a Clam there at the front.
I don't think I've ever seen that before in Lorcana. We saw 4 beasts last match, last match. 3 of them play at a time, and this time we have all 4 crabs stacked up there. What do you call a group of clams?
No idea.
I don't know. A sheldom, a shell, a clawful of crabs.
Lucas taking a lot of time here to think through how he wants to approach this turn, what he wants to play. It can be really tricky in these later parts of the game against a Ruby deck in general, but especially against Ruby Amethyst, because we see Luca has so many cards in his hand. I think that's 8 cards in his hand off to the side. He split dice down to show everybody, which means he's likely going to have answers to whatever we play. Not to mention we've only seen 1 Be Prepared. Luca is playing 3. Not playing any Sisus, I don't believe.
No, this is just a challenging board to respond to. We'll see one of those Happy as a Clams go into the inkwell. You know, these are cards that you do want to see in the end game. There's some of your higher end cards, but just not a lot to be done with them right now. It'd be nice to get a bigger body on the board, but again, that library unchecked, you know, Luca's going to be able to draw more cards, more lore next turn, and not a lot of instant answers right now. So There's that
There's the
croquet
croquet
mallet.
mallet being played. I was about to say something that's, I think, kind of interesting. You know, these Blurple decks usually are looking to build up a slew of items so that they can finish the game off with their Tamatoa. Oh, so shiny. I don't even think. Is Lukas not playing the big Tamatoa? I guess he's not. He's only playing the Happy as a Clams. I'm looking at the deck list here.
Well, that croquet mallet giving Rush that Tamatoa, doing 4 damage to the library. Luca now responding, doing all the things, drawing the cards, and then questing there with a couple characters, going up to 14, I believe. And well on his way. 16,
Up
there
to
we go.
16, okay.
Well on his way to closing this out. So that is game on board.
Game on board for Luca. Lucas is going to have to find an answer. We do have a Monstro in hand.
Oh, never mind.
2 Pirates Life.
Never
He has
mind.
it. Luca's going to take game 1.
Oh my goodness, what a finish. I don't know how long Luca was sitting on this Pirate's Life. I know one of them is in there for quite a while, but having exactly the amount that he needs to close out Pirate's Life, a card, of course, that gives you 2 lore and takes 2 lore from your opponent. That's game 1, Lumineers. Luca taking that from Lucas. And on the play with Ruby Amethyst, 1 game away now from being the 2nd player to qualify for the semifinals in the first ever Disney Lorcana World Championship. Luca, though, a chance to respond at this point. That Ruby Amethyst deck will have to be retired. Luca will move on to his other deck.
Yeah, now Lucas has to decide if he wants to play this Blurple deck or if he wants to try playing his Amber Ruby deck, which, looking at the deck list here, looks like a pretty aggressive list. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the switch being on the play, but it looks like he's going to stay on Blurple here, going up against Emerald Sapphire.
Yeah, I don't know what his sleeves look like, so I can't tell just yet if he switched it up. But the ink indicators do seem to indicate that he is on Blurple, and that's what the graphics are indicating as well. So we could be in for a longer match here. Some of these green-blue lists, these Sapphire-Emerald lists, games can go rather long. They're built to kind of control the board. Usually, if you're on the item variant, you're building item engines, and then you're working in sort of a game state that allows you to close things out pretty quickly.
And Luca is on that. I see 4 Oswalds in the deck. Lots of items, including cards like Galactic Communicator, Merlin's Carpet Bag. What's the one that I'm... Do we have a Radigan's...
Maverick,
yeah,
right here.
4 Radigan's Marvelous Traps in there, too. So we saw some of those cards used yesterday.
It's actually been a fairly popular list here by some of the top players. Zach Bivens running a list very similar to this with 1 or 2 cards difference and navigating his way into the top 8 as well. Kurt Spice, I think, on this list. No, Kurt's not on this list. But there's a couple players running that here. And to give you an idea of what these decks are trying to do and just how item heavy they are, most of these decks run in the range of 30 items. Zach Bivens' list has 30 items. The other one we saw yesterday running 29. So half the cards in this deck usually are items, giving those Oswalds plenty of cards to hit, and also making the board states just, I don't know another way to describe it, but ridiculous in the end game with all sorts of items, getting all sorts of abilities activated every time things are inked or things are played. It's rather wild. I saw you doing math over
Yeah,
there, Brandon. What are we at?
there's 30 items.
30
in this
items.
list. So those Oswalds are very likely to hit if Luca can find them early, and Lucas is going to need ways to interact with those Oswalds because the amount of value that you create from those Oswalds, just being able to ink a card and then flip them off the top. We do see an Oswald in hand for Lucas at the start here. When we look at Lucas's hand, we do see ramp through Tipo as well, and a sail. See what he decides to keep in his opening hand.
Yeah, those Oswalds, sometimes in other decks, they're high rolly cards. You know, you can hit off the top a big card like a Lucky Dime, but oftentimes you miss. But in these decks, 50% of the time you're hitting. And if you can establish it on turn 2 and start dropping items off the top of your deck, like Merlin's Carpet Bag's a 5-cost card, I believe, or Lucky Dime, a 7-cost card, I mean, the value you get out of that can really allow you to close things out really, really quickly.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through Lucas's list here to see if there's any particular card that would help us get rid of one of those Oswalds before it gets much value, and I don't think there is. There's at least not before his turn 4, before the Oswald would be able to get a little bit of value. He is playing 1 copy of Ice Spikes, which would allow him to exert a character when it's played, so you could potentially set something up to banish that Oswald the turn that it's played. But other than that, I think it's not going to be until he can get up to 5 ink and play something like an Elsa to exert one of them or let it go before those Oswalds start getting their triggers. And all it takes is 1 or 2 good items pulled off the top from an Oswald for this Emerald Sapphire list to really start rolling.
Yeah, this is an engine builder list, as we call it. It's a card that wants to get a bunch of pieces on the board that all interact with each other to do several things when you do one particular action. And sometimes, again, in the end game, following these board states is rather tricky. So if we get to that point, we'll try to help you navigate it, but you have to pay very close attention when this deck gets clicking.
Yeah, because there's a lot of triggers that end up happening with all the items that are in there. I think this is the closest deck we really have to like an OTQ, a one-turn quest deck that is just, you have a bunch of items in play. I'm noticing that Luca is playing 2 Lucky Dimes, and so if he can get both of those out there, all he needs to do is get up to 10 items, then drop a Tamatoa So Shiny, and he has game. But we are going to get into this second game of the second top 8 match today, and we're going to start with Lukas inking a bell and passing the turn.
And it's over to Luca for that turn 1 popsicle. That's something Lukas would have loved to do, so Luca on script so far. Back over to Lukas. And we are looking at Lukas' hand here. We do see that Oswald, as you highlighted earlier, Brandon. That'll be a great turn 2 play if he can get it on board.
Lukas does find the ramp with the Tipo here, inking one of our Tamatoa, Happy as a Clam. We saw 4 of those in hand last game, and Lukas is going to go ahead and ink another card from hand to start this ramp process. Luca, we see that Oswald being played on turn 2.
Yeah, and it's really important to hit that ramp. I mean, the first answer that Lukas really has for that Tipo is getting that Elsa at 5 ink, and so wanting to get to that 5 ink turn as fast as possible. Tipo now questing for a lure. Lukas starting to push his lure total a little bit higher, but it's back over to Luca, and that Oswald will be sitting there waiting to be activated this turn.
If we have a ramp card in hand too, we can ink twice, can potentially get 2 items off. We're going to ink one of our Tamatoa So Shiny, and we do find a Radigan's Trap off the top that's going to get played. It'll come in exerted, but Radigan's Marvelous Trap does not need to be exerted to be used. No reason to use it now. When it's banished, you banish the item and an opponent loses 2 lore. And we are going to play a hidden ink caster as well. So Luca gets to draw a card now. All of his uninkable cards can be inked.
And that's a really important card to establish in the early, or at least early mid-game in this deck. There are so many uninkables. It is a risk. So a hidden Inkcaster also gets you another item on the board, but turning, again, as you pointed out, all of your uninkables into inkables, an important card here. Everything is clicking right now, I think, for Luca.
Lucky for Lukas, he has that Elsa, the 5th Spirit, at the front of his hand when we drew a card for turn. So I'm sure we're going to be looking to use that on this turn just to banish this Oswald, so that Luca can't continue to play items for free as he's inking. The question is, what are we inking? Is a Merlin Crab? We are going to see that Elsa played, taking out the Oswald.
Excellent answer. I mean, that's exactly what Luca wants to do in this game plan. Ramp and then get to that Elsa as fast as possible. Shut down that Oswald, because a runaway Oswald is no good for Lukas. Now, for Luca, this deck does draw a lot of cards, but it generally does it leveraging the Workshop.
Yes.
Luca's going to be looking to get a Workshop, Maurice's Workshop, in play as soon as possible. That is also a juicy target for that Kuzco in Lucas's hand there. Unless he finds it, his card draw is going to be slowed down a little bit here. So losing that Oswald feels pretty impactful at this moment.
I couldn't agree more. Sorry, keep going.
No.
I was just going to say, I couldn't agree more. I feel like the Workshop is one of the key cards to this deck if you can't keep an Oswald in play. And we do establish the Workshop. I think Lukas will be holding on to this Kuzco to get rid of it on the next turn potentially, because we will start seeing quickly how much Luca can utilize this if it sticks around for very long.
Yeah, Maurice's Workshop, again, the card that allows you to draw 1 card if you pay 1 ink every time you play an item. And in a deck running 30 items, that's a lot of extra cards.
Yeah, and especially in a Sapphire deck where you're usually able to have extra ink in your inkwell anyway, you're almost always able to pay that extra cost. We are going to sing Friends on the other side. We're going to draw Friends. And I missed what the other card, another Elsa, I believe, the 5th Spirit.
Elsa, not cards that you're sad to have in hand at this point.
No, always good ways to interact with the opponent, especially if we see like an Oswald come down. We're going to ink a Friends, and we are going to play that Kuzco, getting rid of the Workshop. Lukas understanding just how vital that is to Luca's game plan, saying, I don't want you drawing any extra cards. If Lukas can continue to draw cards and put things on board, Luca is going to have a difficult time dealing with it, as this isn't Ruby Sapphire that we're playing, or Ruby Amethyst, it's Emerald Sapphire, so the only version they have of a board wipe is something like Under the Sea. Usually you have to set up some Sapphire coils in order to really get value out of it.
If Lukas pulls this game out and manages to take this game, that banishing that Workshop right there in this moment is huge. Everything could have pivoted on that play. So having that Kuzco in hand and able to hit it right then before Luca was able to get any cards out of it is incredibly important.
Lucas a little bit low on cards too, though. Only 2 Elsas and a Hades, Infernal Schemer.
But a fantastic board state with 6
Yes.
lore on board right now. And Luca not really with any answers, although playing that Happy as a Clam to pull back 2 items feels really good. And now we understand why he used Radigan's Marvelous Trap last turn.
Yeah, and also something to note, that Cusco puts the workshop in the inkwell, meaning that these Tamatoa Happy as a Clams can't pull those workshops back. Just a small little detail there on the...
Incredibly important.
Yes.
Huge here, because that workshop certainly would have been pulled back from the discard pile by that Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. And Lucas, again, with the answer to that Happy as a Clam with the Hades, sending that to the inkwell as well. So giving Luca a little ramp, but once again, Luca establishing a card he wants to in order for his game plan to actually work. And then Lucas able to answer it immediately. And now with that Hades, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lore on the board. Luca is going to have to find some answers or start cycling traps again to keep Lucas's lore gain under control.
Yeah, and I know Luke has been holding on to an Under the Sea in hand, which would hit a lot of characters on the other side of the board. It wouldn't hit all of them. We are going to start with a Popsicle, though, so unless we can ramp an extra 2 cards this turn, we can't use Under the Sea just yet.
Now that Under the Sea desperately wants a Sapphire Coil
We're going to
in
see
play.
another Radigan Marvelous Trap entering play. As you mentioned, a way to slow Lucas down 2 of them, so... Luca has the ability to take Lucas down for lore, and we get to play Scrooge McDuck for free because we have 4 items that we can exert. It'll let Lucas look at the top 4 cards of his deck, reveal an item, and put it in his hand, and the rest go on the bottom. So a good way for him to dig into items that he might need. It looks like we did find one. There it is, that workshop.
Oh, yeah, finding that workshop. Luca, very happy to see that there. He needs that to really power him into the end game here. Bell will challenge into Tipo, get that 1 lore off the board, and we've established Scrooge McDuck as well. We're going to pass it over with plenty of lore on Lucas's side of the board, but 2 Radigan's Marvelous Traps on board feels pretty good when you're trying to slow your opponent down. So we'll see how Lucas chooses to respond here. He's had the answers so far.
Lucas only has 3 cards in hand. One of them an Elsa. I think we drew another Hades Infernal Schemer. Not sure what the 3rd card is, though. But Lucas is, it looks like he's getting really close to 20 because we have 7 lore on board. If he quested everything this turn, he'd go up to 16. But as you mentioned, Liam, those 2 Radigan's Traps on Lucas' side means we're not as close as we think we are.
Hades banishing that Scrooge Resourceful Miser, sending that to the inkwell as well. So an answer here from Lucas and establishing another 2 lore on the board. Now, that Under the Sea, as you pointed out, is a danger, but not able to hit Hades or Cusco right now. And Luca would have to spend his entire turn spending all 8 ink to play it, so it doesn't feel like a perfect answer. Now, there was a Sapphire Coil available for Luca there with that Scrooge. I'm not sure if he took it, but if we can get a Sapphire Coil on the board, that does make that Under the Sea just a little bit better.
Yeah, we're in a position now where we have to answer Lucas's board soon, because even if we have another Tamatoa Happy as a Clam and we can continue to recycle these Radigan Marvelous Traps and banish them, Lucas is definitely questing for more than 4 every turn. So eventually he's going to get his way to 20, but Luca is just slamming item after item after item, allowing him to draw with these with the workshop.
Now, a whole grab bag of items coming down there. The Popsicle, the Workshop, the Galactic Communicator. Galactic Communicator is a card that will be an answer to a little bit of that lore gain, enabling him to bounce a card back to Lucas's hand. But look at the cards the options that he has. I mean, you're either bouncing a Hades back to Lucas's hand, which doesn't feel great because then it allows his on-play ability to activate again, or a Genie, which allows Lucas to draw a card, or an Elsa, which only has 1 lore, or that Cusco, which can banish one of your items, perhaps that Workshop again. So Galactic Communicator is a great control card, but all of the options here for Luca don't feel terribly great.
Yeah, and Luca having to work really hard to get Lucas away from game on the next turn. That banishing both of those Radigan's Marvelous Trap to drop down to 4 lore for Lucas, and then using the Galactic Communicator to bounce the Genie, so that I think we can only quest for 7 on this turn, putting him up to 19.
I don't know that there's any reach in this.
There's
deck.
1 Merlin Goat.
One Merlin Goat
are in a deck, so there's a chance if we can draw any cards.
Let's see. We will play the Genie.
We do have the Genie. Are we going to find the goat?
Oh, no goat. It's the Azurite Sea.
Just a sail.
So we'll be able to quest to 19. No more Marvelous Traps on board. Of course, Luca can always bring those back if he finds another Happy as a Clam. We are going to quest with everything here.
I think Lucas's game plan is just keep pushing to 20. At some point, you're going to break through.
Yeah, he's gained 25 lore, I think, at this point
yeah.
in the game. Fox will bounce.
Oh, beautiful. bouncing the Cusco back with the Fox, we can reuse it to banish one of Luke or put one of Lucas' items in the inkwell if we need to. Luca still has to survive the turn.
And that's fantastic insurance. Let's say that Luca does manage to control a bit of the board and play another Marvelous Trap. Marvelous Trap does come into play exerted. And so if that's one of his plans to keep Lucas off victory, can prevent that.
We're going to see the Sapphire Coil being played by Luca.
Under the Sea looks better and better the more you have.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he has
it. Luca choosing to scoop his deck, saying, I do not have the answers to that board state. And Lucas taking that game with his Blurple deck into that Emerald Sapphire items deck. And I want to go back to that play, having that Cusco in hand to banish that workshop as soon as it was played is the play of the match for me.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas really had everything he needed going into this game. He was able to find his ramp on turn 2. He was able to play the Elsa to get rid of the early Oswald, and then follow that up with the Cusco to get rid of the workshop, like you mentioned, because even on one of the turns that later we saw the workshop being played, we saw the turn after that, Luca just played item after item after item, paying the cost every time, filling up his hand, looking for answers.
Well, we're going to get to see Luca's deck again. Luca has to win with this deck as well, having already won with his Ruby Amethyst deck. So he's going to take it in again, and this time on the play against Lucas's Amber Ruby deck, a kind of an unconventional color combination. Unfortunately, you know, when you pair Sapphire and Amethyst, those are the favorite two partners for Ruby right now. So Ruby has to go into another color, which you don't see it with often in the competitive meta, although Amber Ruby has seen its share of tournament play with Mufasa builds, etc. But in this instance, we're playing a more aggressive version. You're taking a look at the list there, Brandon. What do you see?
Yeah, I'm taking a look at the list. It is definitely more aggressive version of the list. We have some Daisy Ducks in there, but we also have a Flynn Rider Frenemy that we've seen in previous metas, sort of making a comeback for this tournament specifically. A very aggressive list, one that I'm interested to see how this will go for Lucas, because there's no interaction with items in this deck either. So if Luca is able to establish an Oswald, establish a workshop, get a couple Sapphire Coils out there, there's a chance that he is going to be able to control Lucas before Lucas is able to get running, especially since Lucas is on the draw. We do see a Prince John in hand as well. One of the best turns for this Amber Ruby deck is to do something like a Flynn Rider on 2, followed by a high strength character like the new Prince John afterwards, so that Flynn Rider can start accruing lore quickly. And so if Luca isn't able to get established fast enough and able to challenge and banish all of the characters that Lucas is playing, because he is playing the Lady Family Dog that allows you to play an extra character. There's a couple early bodyguards through Jim Deere and the Prince that he could play as well to make it even more difficult for Luca to break through the characters that he's playing. I can kind of see this going either way depending on how each player opens up.
Yeah, I mean, I love this Ruby Amber build. It's a lot of fun, and it's brought into this format mostly because you can banish Steel during the Swiss rounds, and even now, because Steel has a lot of the early game answers which prevent you from achieving your game plan of winning quickly, including cards that answer a runaway Flynn Rider, which you highlighted you can play on turn 2. Yeah, to your point, this deck wants to win fast. Lucas wants to win fast here. There's a little bit of reach, but not a lot. Cards like Super Goof, we're not playing some of the Strength Matters cards that we've seen in other builds of this deck, like the Tinkerbell or the Maximus.
Yeah,
so
the Flynn.
Really, you're going to have to do it the traditional way with a lot of questing, and we're going to see if Lucas can get that done here on the draw.
Already see Luca has a Popsicle for turn if we want to play it. Gonna take a minute to see what he wants to ink for turn. These early turns are super important. You have to make sure you keep cards in hand that can answer any early pressure that Lucas is putting on. We're gonna go ahead and ink a Sapphire Coil, play a Popsicle, draw a card, and then pass the turn to Lucas.
And this is
Does
not
Lucas have a 1-drop?
No, I do not think he does. This is not an ideal hand for Lucas here, and even his 2-drops. I mean, I think you do see the Piglet there, but without a turn 1 play, that Piglet. Oh, we do have the 1-drop. Okay, it's the Mulan Injured Soldier, which comes into play with 2 damage on it. Well statted, but the drawback is she comes into play with 2 damage counters. So incredibly important to have that 1-drop because it does allow him to play that Piglet on turn 2 and perhaps quest for 3 on turn 3. So good on Lucas there. And then back over to Luca for the response.
Yeah, I'm looking at Luca's hand. I did see an Oswald in there. There's also a hidden Inkcaster. I think he's doesn't want to ink this Popsicle, but is choosing to. We are going to play this Oswald out. So as Luca continues to ink during this game, as long as this Oswald is in play, we can start looking at the top card of our deck if it's an item played exerted. Definitely Lucas had some 2-drops, though, that he could follow up with.
Yeah, Lucas will look to establish something here. One thing I will note, Luca does have Under the Sea in hand, which could be incredibly important to allow him to shut down Lucas's game plan later. We won't be available for a while, but he already has that answer.
And one thing that Lucas, I'm sure, has in mind is that Under the Sea, because it can be a back-breaking card against these aggro decks. But Lucas is playing a couple cards that have 3 strength, have 5 strength, things that get around it. We saw Luca ink a Sapphire Coil early. We are going to see a Fishbone Quill being pulled off the top as Luca inks through that Oswald trigger. And the Cloud Kicker is going to come down, bounce that Piglet back to hand,
That's
slowing Lucas down.
That is huge. Lucas wanted to get 3 off that Piglet so badly. Running away with lore is key to his plan. So having that Cloud Kicker in hand slows down the tempo and puts a body on board that can respond to any quests. That is a huge play.
This is the difference between being on the play and on the draw for these aggro lists. You're not able to get those characters out as efficiently, as safely. Any drawbacks like this really slow these aggressive decks down. And as you mentioned earlier, Liam, they don't have that much reach. So you're trying to get as much lore as possible. We are going to see the Lady Family Dog being played, and we can replay this Piglet for free from Lady's ability, and we're passing it back to Luca.
Oh, and it's another Oswald.
2
Oswalds. Now 2 Oswalds in board. Oh my goodness, this is what Luca wants to be doing. He's going to start to run away with things here if he finds items. Luckily, a Scrooge there on the bottom.
Scrooge for the
Luckily
first.
for Lucas. And then we have a Bell.
And a Bell, both missing.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness. Unfortunate there for Luca. He'd love to get value out of those, but he'll play an item the old-fashioned way, putting Hidden Inkcaster in play and allowing him to ink then uninkable items.
And there's the Sapphire Coil. That is going to be a key card in this matchup. And a workshop as well.
No.
You can see the power of Oswald as they get established. This Sapphire Coil is going to be very vital if we get to these Under the Sea turns, and especially if Lucas is able to play some of the higher strength characters. It'll give Luca the opportunity to send all of those characters to the bottom, utilizing that Sapphire Coil, which of course reduces the strength of a character of your choosing when you ink a card. And you're definitely trying to ink cards, getting these Oswald triggers.
Luca, a very, very stoic player, but I know that he left for joy a little bit when he hit that workshop. Getting that into play here is huge. And goodness. And as you pointed out, Lucas, without an answer in this particular build for those items. So that workshop is going to be there all game long, drawing extra cards off every single item. And now Lucas trying to figure out how he can close out this game as quickly as possible. That's one way to do it. Quest for 6 here on this turn.
You know, there's another item that I think Lucas is scared to see, which is a Radigan's Marvelous Trap, because as soon as those start entering play, we can start pulling Lucas even further back. But we are going to play a second Piglet and a Gym Deer, so a bodyguard character, 0-4, just one thing that Luca would have to challenge through before he can challenge the Lady, the Piglet, the Mulan, hopefully keeping them around for an extra turn, as Lucas is presenting a lot of lore on board currently.
But look at all of those characters and look at their strength lines. They are all 2 or less. With that Fishbone Quill in play, Luke is able to ink 2 cards per turn. 2 in the inkwell this turn means that you will have 8 on the following turn, which is the perfect card or number for Under the Sea. But you know what, Brandon? You don't need to play it with your ink if you have 8 cost worth of characters on board, because you can sing it together.
Yes, Under the Sea is a song that can be sung together. We're going to start, though, by just exerting all these items that we've got for free by Oswald, so that we can play Scrooge and continue to find even more items off of the top of our deck before we spent any ink just developing a 4/4 one lore character there with Scrooge McDuck. And we haven't even inked for the turn. We can still find items later. We're going to get another workshop in play. So now for every item that gets played, we can pay 1 ink to draw an extra card. We're going to draw a card from the first workshop after that one enters play. Looks like we're about to ink a card, so a lot of triggers are going to happen here. When we ink a card, the Oswalds will trigger, and so will the okay, so we get the Happy as a Clam goes to the bottom from the Oswald. The first one, we get another Sapphire Coil. Once that enters, both of the workshops in play enter the bag, so we can choose to pay 1 ink to draw a card. Also, the other Sapphire Coil triggers, so we're choosing characters to reduce their strength by 2 because of a card entering the inkwell.
Which is important here, because if Luca wants to, he can slow down that lore gain by challenging into those Piglets after clearing up Gym Deer, and that strength reduction will be important.
Yeah, this makes it so that he can challenge with these Oswalds if he wants to, and they won't be banished. We do see a Galactic Communicator pulling off the top. This is going to trigger the Maurice's workshops. The Oswalds are going to finish first. We're finding another Hidden Inkcaster. We'll draw a card off of that. Then we're going to use the Galactic Communicator to bounce the Gym Deer back to hand. So now everything's open to be challenged.
And Luca has characters to challenge. All of those characters have had their strength reduced. So the Oswalds, the Cloud Kicker will challenge in there, taking no damage back. Luca happy to leave up, it seems, that that Mulan injured soldier.
Yeah, I think we're getting to a position for Luca where we're getting close to that under the sea turn. We've got two Sapphire coils in place. We're not worried about the strength of any of the characters. We have plenty of ways that we can use items to reduce the lore for Lucas. We can bring back Galactic Communicator with Tamatoa, Happy as a Clam if we want to continue to bounce characters. He's really set up a lock here for Lucas. It's going to be difficult for him to put enough cards in play, and then they stay in play long enough for him to quest with them and get up to 20.
And Lucas here thinking through. Lucas knows that Under the Sea is in there. He knows that that could end his game pretty quickly. So trying to figure out how much do I put out on the board? Do I go for it all? Do I drop everything? You do have the Prince John Frady Cat, which will not be susceptible to the Under the Sea normally, but with 2 Sapphire Coils in play,
it's almost
certainly will be.
guaranteed, yeah. Especially with a Fishbone Quill and a Hidden Ink Caster. Luca able to ink any card in hand at that point to get those Sapphire Coil triggers.
It's just that last turn so impactful there for Luca, clearing everything up. And you see the item engine in full swing here.
Yeah, I was about to say, you see the power of this deck once it gets rolling. The amount of resources it's able to play for free, essentially, not using any resources through the Oswalds, or for very low resources, being able to draw cards from the Maurice's workshop just for 1 ink as items are being played for free, which means you have all this extra ink that you can spend. We played a Scrooge McDuck for free as well because we had all of the items. The amount of ink worth of cards that were played last turn for Lucas is astronomical compared to the amount of ink we actually have to spend.
Yeah, you know, the best cost in any TCG or any game really is free.
Free.
So Lucas here just thinking through his lines. It looks like we're getting 3 ink. We are going to get that Prince John Frady Cat in play. 1 more ink, get the Daisy Duck. So getting all the characters he can on board. That'll unlock Piglet's ability. So Piglet will be able to quest for 3, and then 4 with that Mulan, going up to 11, and back over to Luca for the response and all the triggers that we're about to see.
We're going to ready all the items. There could be a lot of triggers happening.
Anytime you have to put your hand on the board and use your entire palm to ready your board state, you know things are going well for you.
You're probably in a good position, yeah.
So figuring out what order we want to do things here. The Fishbone Quill will ink a card. We're going to get triggers off the Oswald. First card is a Hidden Ink Caster. We're going to get the 3rd one in play. Then we're triggering the Sapphire Coils and reducing Prince John's strength, it looks like. I'm not sure. Oh, we're answering a question here before we do the second one.
Radigan Marvelous Trap. Pulled off the 2nd Oswald. I think we're triggering the Maurice's Workshop there. Draw a card.
So card draw, Sapphire Coil is going ink out. We're going to ink again. We're going to find a bell. It's going to go to the bottom. And off the top deck, it's another Workshop.
I think that's
3 Workshops in play now. Looks like we're going to quest here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And oh no, never mind. It's not quest. It is Under the Sea. Singing it together. Darling, it's better. Down where it's wetter. Under the bottom of your opponent's deck. And there those characters go.
And just to make sure Lucas doesn't get too close, we'll banish our Radigan's Marvelous Trap, reducing 2 lore and establishing a Tamatoa. So Tamatoa is so shiny, has an extra lore for every item in play. This is how Emerald Sapphire closes out these games quickly. And Lucas is just going to shake hands. He knows there's nothing he can do. Luca is moving on to the semifinals.